Hey there, folks. My name is Alex Coulomb. I run an XR creative studio in New York City called Agile Lens Immersive Design. I've been using Unity for over 10 years now and Unreal Engine for about 8. And today I'm going to walk you through a little bit of how you can start in Unity and bring something to Unreal, and vice versa. Along the way, we'll cover, what the two engines have in common, because they're really not so different. And so you'll see, to begin, on my screen here, I've got both Unity open and then Unreal over there. And we'll just kind of step through getting a couple projects up and running. I'm going to be using Unity 2022.3.8 and Unreal Engine 5.3, which just came out a couple days ago. But really, the general workflow here should work for just about anything. So I'm going to try to keep the two engines side by side. Might have to resize some windows as we go, but I'm going to go ahead and launch 5.3 here. This is in the Epic Games launcher in the library there. And then for projects over in Unity, I'm in the Unity Hub 3.5.1. I'm going to go and say new project. Okay, so now you see we have kind of similar screens here. And we have a bunch of templates and 2D, 3D, AR, VR, etc. We have similar things over on the Unreal Engine side. We have VR. We have over in a couple of these an AR template. All sorts of different things set up for different purposes. So over on the Unity side, I'm going to do the 3D sample scene, which is in the universal render pipeline. And I'm just going to call this to Unreal test. Put that in my Unity folder, say create project. And then over in the Unreal Engine side, it's going to be fun watching me continue to move windows to the left and to the right. Feels like I'm a master sorter. And then over here in Unreal, I'm going to go to architecture and I'm going to open up this ArcViz template just to mix it up a little bit. And I've got this in my UE folder for Unreal, and I'm going to call this to Unity, and we'll create that template. Now notice I can drag the Unity window around. Can't drag the Unreal window around. That's okay. Now, while we're waiting for Unity to open, we can explore a few things about Unreal. If I want to look around, I'm going to hold my right mouse down. I can use WASDQE to move left, right, up, forward, backward, etc. Over in Unity, which just opened, similarly, I'm going to hold the right mouse down to look around, WASQD, etc. E to look around. That part's pretty much identical. Let's once again try to give these guys equal real estate. Do note that when you open a Unity project, Unity Hub does not close down, whereas with Unreal Engine project, the Epic Games launcher does close down. And so we've got a little information here about the universal render pipeline. I'm going to close out of that. And then here's a fun thing. If you want to make Unity look more like Unreal or vice versa, you can absolutely do that because both of them have super dockable windows. But first, let's just look at what is kind of similar and in common. So first, let's talk about what they both have in common. So first of all, both have their basic project windows down at the bottom, as well as an output log, which just gives you information about what's happening. Let me move this to the side for a minute. So output log, console, pretty much the same thing. Project over here in Unity, very similar to the content drawer, which can be opened and closed in Unreal Engine 5 with control space. So similarly, here there's your folder structure on the left and your various assets on the right. You'll see that I'm also using some filters here to try to grab particular, kinds of assets I'm looking for. You can do something very similar in Unity as well. We have our little filter here where we can select by type. So for example, I want to see all the static meshes in the project here. Similarly, over in Unreal, I can go to content and also go filter, and I've already got it set up here for static mesh, but I can click static mesh, and then there we go. This is all the static meshes in this project. And to turn that off, I can hit that, and to turn it off over here, similarly, just turn it off that. So mesh, static mesh, we're kind of on the same page. Now, slight difference, the hierarchy over here in Unity, this is like the outliner over in Unreal Engine. And hey, if I want Unreal Engine to look more like Unity, I could just drag my outliner over to here, and we're starting to match a little bit, right? And if I want to dock this, by the way, I can just literally hit dock in layout, again, just to kind of match Unity a little bit more. So we got hierarchy, outliner, that's the apples to apples there, and then details and inspector. So if I click on an object here, I see the object reflected there. If I click on an object here, I see that object reflected here, and then in both cases, information on the right. So we have information here about like transform, location, rotation, scale, and then these different components. In this case, a reflection probe. If I click on something like the camera, we'll see there's a camera component similarly here. If I grab a camera, we will also see basically a camera component. So, you know, pretty clear. And similarly also, in both cases, we get a little thumbnail of what that camera sees. So we could spend hours going through every single kind of asset in each of these programs and how we start to affect both or either. But the main thing I want to point out is how we can start to transfer assets back and forth. So both Unity and Unreal Engine have a way to activate other tools. So over in Unreal, if I go to Edit and Plugins, we have the Plugins folder here, and this has all sorts of different things we can turn on. So say I'm doing a big VR project, I might start to enable some different OpenXR features so that VR would work. Similarly, over in Unity, mind you, I'm in a template right now that is mostly just set up for the universal render pipeline and this scene, but I could go and start to add in things under Window and Package Manager. So that Package Manager is going to allow me to start to add in other kinds of things. If I type in XR, for example, we have XR Legacy Input Helpers. If instead of in project, I go to Unity Registry and I type in XR again, we'll see more here, Apple ARKit XR Foundation and OpenXR plugin, very much like what we were just looking at over in Unreal, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm actually going to activate a special little plugin over here in Unity called the FBX Exporter. And what do you think that's going to do? That's right. It's going to let us export FBXs. So I'm going to hit install. And that's basically like activating the plugin. In Unity, once you activate a plugin, it's immediately available. In Unreal Engine, when you activate a plugin, it is actually going to require an engine restart. You're going to hear me keep using these terms interchangeably. So plugin, package manager, you know, we're talking about the same thing here. So now that that's active, here's the simplest way that I can take most of the things in this scene and start to bring it over to Unreal. I am literally just going to go ahead and create a new empty actor. In Unreal, by the way, this would be, you can't do it just by right-clicking, but I could do the plus here, and I could just type in actor, and there we go. That's also the equivalent of like a new empty actor, just to, you know, keep going back and forth here. And we're going to call this level root, and we're going to put everything into here. Boop, like that. Oop, child prefab can't be moved. That's fine, that's fine, that's fine. Prefabs, by the way, a lot like blueprints over in Unreal. So anywhere that you see something that you can edit here, the sun sky blueprint, this target spline blueprint, that's a lot like prefabs over in Unity. But let me figure out why I can't put all these in my empty object. Let's try going there, there, post-process volume. Example assets. There we go. It went in that time. So we got everything inside this level root. And again, similar to Unreal, we've got these little eyeballs on the side. So if I want to toggle, you know, the environment on and off, I can do that there. If I want to toggle everything here on and off, similarly there. I do like that nice little invisible outline. That's a cool touch. So once I've got that, I can literally just right click on level root and I can go down to export to FBX. So once I click that, it's just going to say, okay, where do you want it? How do you want to deal with the export? Do we want animation? If animation's here, how do we want to deal with pivots? I'm going to leave all the defaults, especially keep instances, but I'm also going to add in embed textures. That's going to make sure that all these nice textures come with everything here. And I'm just going to call it level root, you know, Unity, just so I remember where it's coming from. And then I'm going to browse onto my desktop, or I've got a folder on my desktop called Study, and this is going to be from Unity. So I'm going to save it there, go ahead and say export. Cool. And if I want to see if that's looking the way I want it to, I'm going to go ahead and open up our default FBX viewer in Windows to see how that loads up. And that looks pretty good. And now we're going to do the same thing in Unreal. So it's a little bit different over here, where if we want to export this whole map, then we are literally going to find the map. And so in this case, I'm going to go under Content and ArcViz Project. Oh, no, I'm not. It's actually right there in the Content folder. It's right here. It's called Main. That little asterisk means I haven't saved it. So if there was anything I was going to move around here, I'd want to, you know, save first, and then right-click on that map. Map, level, scene, these all mean the same things. So I'm going to right-click there, and I'm going to say Asset Actions, Export. Okay, and now same thing. I'm going to find my little folder for my little study here. I'm going to say From Unreal. and I'm going to call this, ArcViz Unreal or something like that, something useful. Now, unfortunately, there aren't as many options here when I'm exporting from Unreal, though, on the pro side, I didn't have to activate a plugin. I'm going to try to keep this whole thing fair and balanced. But I do have some options for things like collision, level of detail, if I care about that. I can use a newer FBX plugin option. Don't really need to worry about ASCII. Some animation stuff if I, again, have animation. Collision if I need that. I'm pretty much just going to leave everything as is. I am going to enable vertex color because one thing you'll notice we don't have here is the ability to export textures. So vertex color will at least help with things like our nice little green environment over here. So that should be okay. I'm going to go ahead and say export. And same thing, we'll just double click on it and see what we got out of here. Now this is useful. It's good to see what this looks like in just the FBX viewer before we bring it over to Unity. This way we know what's inherent versus what is happening in the translation process to Unity. So for some reason, it's giving us this big old hexagonal, outline that could have something to do with the guys over here we have. So if we were to put a look at the background geometry here, we can see, okay, so that's just a plane going around. So we have a bit of a mystery export of geometry for everything going on here. But if we zoom into the inside, we can see our main scene is in here. So we're just going to want to remember once we're over in Unity to delete that piece of geometry so everything's going to work okay. We're generally going to try to use things like the sun sky systems from each application. So now I think we're ready to start importing things. So I've already got this ArcViz Unreal Engine scene open. Let's create a new folder in Unity. And we'll call that from Unreal. Nice empty folder icon. And I'm just going to drag this directly into that folder. All right, and that'll pop right in there. I can take a look at everything inside, and we'll see that in just a second. And then over on the Unreal Engine side, I'm going to grab from Unity. And I'm going to also create a little folder here. Call it from Unity. Peeking over my monitor there, and we will drag that right over. Now notice that when we dragged the FBX into Unity, it didn't give us any options. It just imported directly. Here though, when we're going into Unreal, we can choose a few things. If we know we have a lot of geometry in here, we can jump right into building nanite. We can generate collisions. We can change the scale if we need to do that. I think everything we have here, importing the textures, that's all fine. So the only thing I'm doing is saying, yeah, sure, let's get some nanite in here, and I'll do import all. Okay, so we got this, and now let's go ahead and in Unreal, we've got all these unsaved assets that all came in together, but we see things generally look okay. If I double click on anything here, looks a lot like the asset from Unity. Pretty cool. And because of the way I did the pivots, just kind of leaving the defaults, what I want to do now to get this into my scene is first I'm going to want to save all. And then I'm going to filter by my static meshes here. So I'm just going to grab all the static meshes in that from Unity folder. And I'm going to drag that just right over to, say, here. Or maybe a little closer to the pavilion over there. All right. And we'll see we've got the whole scene there, right? We might want to mess with how we move it around. But it's looking pretty good. We may or may not have a scale issue, depending on how this came in. Unity is in meters, and Unreal is in centimeters. And to keep this together, let's just go ahead and group it, Control-G. So there we go. We've gotten some geometry over into Unreal. And just again, want to call attention to the fact that we have these individual meshes and their textures came in pretty well. We've got, our nice little wood grain on this and whatnot. And we're pretty much done over here. Now over in Unity, we will have to do a couple more things. So let's go ahead and drag our whole scene in, right? And we're going to notice right away that everything gets super, super bright in here. So let's take a look at what's happening on the inside. So let's go ahead and press F, which in both applications frames in on whatever you have selected, and you see it's super, super bright. And that has to do with the way the sun sky blueprint is working over here in Unity, which in Unreal, which not every scene has. But something important about the sun sky blueprint is the light here, the directional light inside of this is 50,000 lux, which is very, very bright. So first thing we're going to want to do is we can either change the sun sky blueprint here by searching in the hierarchy for sun sky and changing the intensity there, or we could use the directional light that's already in the scene. I'm going to maybe say I picked the direction that I like in here, so I might want to keep that. And so in this situation, I am going to say, like, let's just go ahead and turn it down from 50,000 to something more like, I don't know, 2 to start. Also notice that although lights do come in, they do not have shadows on by default. So I can do hard shadows or soft shadows and start to mess with that setting. And let's go ahead and also turn off the directional light. Boop. Okay, so now that's starting to look a little bit better. It's very, very foggy in here. So if we want to, oh, hey, there's our original scene. If we wanted to, we could try to match a little bit more where it's located over here. So a little bit outside that pavilion. So let's just put it kind of, you know, roughly over here. A little hard to see in the fog, but I think it's about in the same place now. And then if we want to change the fog in Unity, easiest place to do that is under Window, Rendering, Lighting, and then down at the bottom of Environment, we should have fog. So we can just turn it off entirely. Or if we, you know, had something like our exponential height fog over here in Unreal turned up very high, you know, maybe we try to match that over here. So fog setting here, exponential height fog over in Unreal is its own object. And, you know, we might say we wanted something like, you know, 0.001 or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I'm just going to turn it off. That's fine. We'll do the same thing over here. Just no fog for now. We're keeping things very, very clear. Note in Unreal that the nice thing that fog does is it starts to bring down the sense that there is nothing in the distance. You know, it does a nice job of kind of connecting the environment over there. Off versus on, right? A little bit more of a bridge. Unity, I don't find it has that problem as much. So in order to make sure that we're getting the full effect of the sun and we get the sky and all that, let's go ahead and find this geometry we have hanging out here, this background geometry. And so you might notice, okay, we've got, you know, a lot of the same stuff in both scenes right now, but because Unreal was not able to bring us textures, this is just a big plane and we don't have these nice buildings from over here. So the easiest way for us to make that happen is actually now if we go into the buildings folder here, and instead of sorting by static mesh, we sort by texture, we can actually see some of these key textures, including that background one, which are going to be important if we want to start matching this a little bit more over in Unity. So I can just go ahead and select all of these, and I can right click. And by the way, same thing with maps. I could right click and do export, and I could export like 10 maps in a row, but I'm gonna go Asset Actions and Export. And in that from Unreal, we'll just save these all as PNGs, which will keep their alpha layers. There are a couple options. Instead of a PNG, you could do a Targa, a bitmap, remember bitmaps, and even these Unreal object files, which are useful when you're going to programs like Maya, but don't worry about that. So once these are all exported, we'll go ahead in that from Unreal folder. We could, you know, create a new textures folder if we wanted to be all, you know, correct about things. But if we go and say from Unreal and we grab these textures and we can see, it seems like they all look good. We can just drag them into that from Unreal folder, populate them in. And I mean, let's start by just trying to say, drag this background PNG onto this over here. Now it's not going to let us. And I believe the reason for that is that we either need to go into the import settings over here, and we'd need to change some settings over in materials where we either do an on-demand remap, or we do something like, you know, extract the embedded materials and start to set them up in a different way if we want to. But again, there aren't really embedded materials. There's all sorts of different ways to start to set this up. But if I do extract embedded materials, now I think I'll have the ability to start to edit these a little more directly. So I can say save, and I'll click on the background geometry here and pull down here, and I should be able to drag that background file right into that base map. And we don't see anything right now, but I think if we say alpha clipping, there we go. There it is. We've got, with alpha clipping on, the same kind of thing that we've got going on over here. So we're starting to get closer. You know, we could add in some clouds and match that. And then, you know, we've got these other textures, like this is like a concrete texture. We could start to drag this in if we wanted to. If we get the right geometry here. something like polished concrete, and maybe we want to grab the normal map into there. And, there's a lot of tiling going on here. It's obviously not the same as the Unreal Engine material perfectly, but we're starting to approximate and get closer. If you're noticing the fog settings here, oh, this is too low. I got to pull that guy up. Oh, one thing to notice about Unreal versus Unity is the y-axis is up in Unity and the z-axis is up in Unreal. I'm pretty sure Unity's in the minority for that, but just to make it a clear comparison. Yeah. Oh, this is definitely in a different spot. It's okay. I was like, I really want to match like about where they are here. Let's try grabbing and putting this like right on top of that yellow thing. It's actually a little post-process volume that definitely did not transfer over. Speaking of things that did not transfer over, we do not have any of the cameras or lights coming from Unity because it didn't all come in together, of course, as a single FBX. It came in as all that separate geometry. So let's go ahead and grab example assets and just move it also to that little yellow spot. And there we go. So now they should be approximately matching. And then before we actually try to see if we can match the views a little bit better, let's go ahead and fix that shadow thing. So that's something we should be able to do in the post-process volume. If I add an override for shadows, actually, no, it's not going to be there. I think we're going to do it over in the universal render pipeline setup. So we'll go under assets, just type in universal. It might be the thing we just saw right there. And we're looking for something like this that says shadows. And then I think if we crank up that max distance to 5,000, or maybe this one right next to it, 5,000, one of these at 5,000, there we go. Now we're starting to see everything go out. Okay, right about here. There we go. Yeah, this text didn't come over. That's fine. Let's turn it off. And voila, this is going to be like the thumbnail for what we're doing, where we've got basically the same view set up in both cases. Try to get the aspect ratios a little bit closer. Could play with field of view and all that, but pretty neat. Pretty neat. Oh, and one more thing. Isn't it fun to point out that the sun is definitely in the same place? I'm just glad that those things come in together. If I go to sun sky also, I could do a quick thing where I click on the directional light and I start to make the bloom and everything match a little bit more by cranking up that source angle. You can see we got a lens flare over here, but that's the core geometry. It's also cool that these people transferred over fine, our little RPCs. So a lot of cool stuff going on there. And then I'd start to recreate. I'd grab like a good Unity water material for over here and just continue to play with matching the two setups. So very fun. Again, my name is Alex Coulomb. Very nice to give you this instruction. Find me on Twitter or YouTube at iBrews. And again, follow my company, Agile Lens Immersive Design. Thanks very much. Cheers.